Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS Slate breakdown for Monday, April 29th. We are here. We're breaking it down again. It was a nice weekend, some fun NBA and MLB DFS, and as always, we will cover yesterday's slate, both the perfect lineups and the winning lineups, and then we will dive into pitching and some stacks to consider. But before we do all that, come join us at LineStar. $39.99 per month gets you access to everything we do, all the props, all the DFS. You get it all. You're going to see everything that I do here daily, as well as Props AI Plus, the Optimizer, and, the Dinger tool, the Matchups tool. You get it all. Now, let's get into the slate. I think it's an interesting one to cover. We got, 9 games today on both FanDuel and DraftKings, and we are going to start it out on FanDuel with the perfect lineup. So, Eric Fedde got it done. 56 he put up at 8,300. Guy has been very good lately. Hitting-wise, though, that was really the story that got stuff done yesterday. Yankees went nuts, had like 15 runs or something like that. 3-man Yankee stack, 2-man Washington stack. Then some one-offs to complete that perfect lineup. Well under salary, 370 score, so just a giant score. And then the winner went to Purple Octopus with 306.6. Good old nerdy tenor on DK is Purple Octopus on FanDuel, and he had a day. He went with Screwball, so was a chalky pitcher here, but he had that 4-man Yankee stack that got it done with 2-man Milwaukee. 2 cheap Milwaukee bats that were low owned with Senzel. Got it done. He won by like 4 points. Congrats to him. And let's move it on to good old DK. On DraftKings, our pitchers were Fedde and Dane Dunning. I think Tex in chat prior to the start said he was stacking the Miami and Washington game with Dunning, which he said Dunning's going to have 12 Ks. Dunning had 10, so that Washington-Miami stack almost just got there. Just that Yankees went a little too nuts, but hitter-wise, we did have 3-man Yankees, 2-man Washington, and one-offs. Didn't use all the salary, almost a 300 lineup, and the winning lineup went to Danny C. 45, who had Dunning and Screwball. So pretty chalky pitching here. But this Yankee stack was low owned, had a 4-man Yankee stack, had 2-man Oakland stack, Baltimore run back, and then the Senzel one-off, which was pretty much a must yesterday due to the fact that he was 13% owned and had 2 home runs, so he just put up a big score. So let's get into the slate now. We'll go to today's slate, have some fun with it. Now, highest owned pitcher, Joe Boyle. That is one tough pill to swallow. His FIP, however, is way better than his ERA, so he has been getting a bit unlucky. He has a little strikeout upside, 23% K rate. The big thing with him is he's just been walking way, way, way too many batters, 6.6 per 9. So if he can have a game where he has his control, maybe that K rate comes up a little bit, that walk rate goes down a little bit, and then it starts to look pretty interesting at 6.2 K. Being that cheap, a 23.4% K rate just doesn't happen that often. So I understand why people are going there. And Pittsburgh hasn't been that great of an offense, striking out 24%, only a 138 WOBA. So I don't mind having a little bit of Boyle. Having him be your highest owned pitcher, though, I think is a bit crazy. I think there's just a lot of risk in that pick. So I like Boyle. There is absolute upside. He can totally get, 23, 24 in this matchup. So I like having a little bit of him. Going 30+%. Yeah, it's kind of high. Next, we got Joe Ryan. Absolutely great matchup versus the White Sox. They're not very good. but they're not striking out a ton versus righties. Meanwhile, Boyle, 2.87 FIP over his first 5 starts is extremely good. Almost a 33% K rate, extremely good. Only negative really is almost 48% fly balls, 7 barrel balls, and 73 batted balls isn't great. That pretty much covers, this first part of the season. So those two are scary, but everything else looks really good. One other thing that I really need to bring up is he's averaging 45% less fantasy points away. So that is definitely a bit scary. He's not as good as away, takes away some of that ceiling, and the White Sox lineup is getting a little bit better. They added Tommy Pham, Eloy Jimenez is back, but does not stop the fact that we have a combined K rate of 28%. I think you got to have some Joe Ryan. There's not a ton of starters, and he's probably the guy with the highest floor, highest ceiling in today's matchup. So don't mind some Joe Ryan. Next, we got Max Fried, 8,700. I'm absolutely willing to go there. He found his mojo last game, had a 92 pitch complete game, 6 Ks, great job. He's averaging 43% more fantasy points away, in a decent spot versus the Mariners, who strike out almost 25% versus lefties. They do have a decent WOBA though, versus lefties, and 150 ISO or so is meh. So I think the matchup's good, and I don't mind going here whatsoever, especially on FanDuel, where he is just way too cheap on FanDuel. I think 8,700 is still too cheap on DraftKings, and very, very willing to go there. Next, we got Luis Severino, 8,200. I'm absolutely intrigued. He's been pitching extremely well, 3.34 FIP. The one thing is he just does not have the K rate he used to have. His K rate, 22% so far this year. If you include last year, it's 19.6 over his last 20 starts, but at least the Cubs strike out a lot, and their WOBA is super low versus righties. So I am intrigued to try and pick on some Cubs with Severino at home. Combined K rates, 24%. I think that's high enough at 8.2K. If he's able to, only give up 1 run and strike out 5 or 6, he can definitely pay off his salary there. Next, we got Griffin Canning. Look, Canning is way too cheap for the quality of pitcher that he was last year. This year, we have not seen that same pitcher. He keeps getting blown up, but at least he's had extremely hard matchups. This is another hard matchup, though, but gave up 5 runs to Baltimore, gave up 4 runs to Boston, gave up 7 runs to Boston, gave up 2 to Tampa, and gave up 3 to Baltimore. So he has faced 5 good opponents that can hit the ball, and this was the Boston that was still healthy and hitting the ball very well. So I don't love the matchup. It's another hard one, but I do think Canning is a better pitcher than 6.3K. That is the only reason he is getting some ownership. If you took that out, nobody would go there because his K rate so far this season, 18%. But over the last 20, you got a 27% K rate, a 4.28 FIP. That is way better than a 6,300 pitcher. So if you think he can bounce back a little bit, if you think he's working back into that guy, then take him. But I definitely am a little worried about him here, and I doubt I'm going to have very much of him, but I'm absolutely willing to sprinkle some in. Next, we got Ryan Papoy. He's off to a pretty solid start. We got a 3.9 FIP, 28% K rate. StatCast data is a little scary. Ton of fly balls. Decent amount of hard contact, 33%. The opponent team splits over the last 20 games favors Milwaukee big time. But if you stretch that out to 150 games, it's not too bad. So I don't mind this spot for Ryan Papoy. I think his K line is pretty high. His 6.5 is what his strikeout line is on sportsbooks. And with it being that high, I got to take some swings. I think this is an interesting spot. Milwaukee's offense has cooled down a little bit than that super hot start that it took. So I don't mind taking a couple swings at a low-owned Papoy. Next, we got Nick Lodolo. So, look, the Padres are pretty good versus lefties. Manny Machado excels versus lefties. Tatis excels versus lefties. Kim excels versus lefties. I think there's a good enough lineup here where the Padres could give him some trouble. One thing I do got to say is that Lodolo can really put it together and have some real good games. Don't mind having a little bit of Lodolo, but I definitely favor the Padres in this matchup a little bit. After that, there's not too much we need to look at. I do want to bring up Garrett Crochet a little bit just because of the start that he's had. Look, his FIP has gone way up. He was amazing to start the season, but 5.08 FIP now. Strikeouts K is still extremely high at 31%. So I'm willing to take some swings against the Minnesota, who strikes out 23% versus lefties. The other thing here is Crochet is averaging 100% more fantasy points when at home. So he's had 3 starts at home. His 3 home starts were okay. His 3 road starts were bad. Versus KC, gave up 2 runs, only 5 strikeouts, 5 innings. Versus Philly, gave up 7 runs. Versus Minnesota, gave up 5 runs. He's back home. Maybe that calms him down a little bit. It's at least one thing going in his favor. You're talking about a guy with a 26.8% combined K rate at home. It's at least intriguing and enough to consider the guy. If he can go back into who he was for those first couple starts, 8.6K is too cheap. If he's who he was the last 4, 8.6K is more expensive. So your guess is as good of mine at this point on who he is. I'm not that sure, but I'm absolutely willing to take a couple swings. Look, there's not that many pitchers that I really like to play on this slate, and he is one of the few that I will consider. Pretty much everybody after him, I'm not really interested in. Matt Waldron at 6.8K on DraftKings, I would consider. The fact that he can put up, a mid-20s outcome at 6.8K is interesting. 24% combined K rate at that price is just really cheap. And we have seen when he is on, he's actually pretty good. Just don't know if he can stay on. Cincinnati strikes out a ton versus righties, 26%, but they do hit righties hard at a 183 ISO. Waldron, I've said it pretty much every one of his starts. Look, he's a knuckleballer. He's a spot where I like to go on both sides. When that knuckleball doesn't work, it gets shelled. When it works, it's good. So it's a interesting spot. Don't mind having some Waldron there. All right, now let's get over to FanDuel. Max Fried is just way too cheap on FanDuel. 7.8K, are you kidding me? It's a decent matchup. All over that, got to do it. Joe Ryan, definitely intrigued there as well. Severino, 9K. With his K rate, a lot of this upside is gone. However, at least he has, a solid chance for, say, 6 innings and get the win. So those two things happen, takes away some of that bad K rate, and, he's worth mentioning. Lodolo, solid K rate, 27% over his last 5, but almost 30% over his last 20. The issue here, San Diego only striking out 17% versus lefties. So that's where I have a hard time going to Lodolo at this price. Papoy definitely in play, even at 10.4K. And then Crochet is in play. I can't do Waldron at 8.1. And that'll do it for good old FanDuel. Now let's go to stacks. All right, so we'll just start on ceiling because we're here. Highest ceiling stacks. We got Atlanta, we got the Dodgers, Milwaukee, Philadelphia. All look pretty good. All reasons to go there. Of those ones, Milwaukee's probably the one I like the least. I think Papoy is actually a decent pitcher here. 3.9 FIP, 4.38, but there's just not a ton of data on him. So I think that those FIP numbers are going to end up coming down. He has a decent K rate. I don't love picking on him. Braves, obviously, always in consideration. And the Dodgers is the matchup I really like coming in from this ceiling spot versus Tommy Henry. Tommy Henry just can get blown up by lefties, and Ohtani, Freeman can definitely get to him. Then you surround that with, Teoscar, who crushes lefties. Mookie Betts crushes anybody, and it starts to look pretty good. So definitely interested in some Dodgers. Let's look at some high-owned stacks here. And Minnesota is the highest owned stack. Look, the fact that they're the highest owned stack, I said I'm interested in Crochet a little bit. I like him even more in this spot just because you get the leverage over the stacks, and he's a big-time strikeout pitcher. So if he gets those 8-10 strikeouts, it's going to look real nice as you're crushing, a bunch of the field that has these Minnesota players. So I'm interested in it. I also don't mind having some Minnesota stacks. They are cheap. The hitters are cheap. They've been hitting decently, and Crochet the last 4 outings hasn't been that good, and we know that bullpen isn't good. So definitely a little interested on both sides of that. Dodgers were popping up a little bit too, and I already like that one. So highest projected stacks we move on. Dodgers, highest projected. Philadelphia's popping 2 versus Griffin Canning, 5.33 FIP over his last 5. Both of these probably should be the 2 highest owned stacks. I like them both a lot and absolutely willing to go to both of them. And check out some value ones. Minnesota's popping up all over the value. I am not that surprised. We did ceiling, so we'll go over to the highest FIP now. And the highest FIP to pick on, Jonathan Bowlen. 5.52 FIP. He hasn't made 20, so he's made less than 5 starts. But Toronto, you can definitely go to them. They are being low owned, and they have a decent upside. Implied total 4.7 is pretty high. Don't mind going to Toronto. Let's check out teams so we can point out some other ones. Arizona, we didn't talk about at all. Paxton hasn't been great. 7.29 FIP over his last 5 starts. It's in Arizona. That offense is pesky and just can put up runs, so I don't mind going with Arizona. The other thing is we've seen teams really try and run on Will Smith a little bit. We know Arizona has some speed, can pick up some steals. Don't hate trying to go with that Arizona stack that's probably fairly low owned. Toronto's up there. We went over that one. Milwaukee's up there. Went over that. And Tampa Bay over Bryce Wilson. Bryce Wilson has a 5 FIP over his last 20. 4.85 over his last 5. At least the bullpen is decent with Milwaukee. Tampa Bay's bullpen is bad, so you can absolutely go to that Milwaukee stack. Just going to need Paboy to get out of the game early, but because I do think he's a decent pitcher. And then if Griffin Canning's bad, that Angels bullpen behind him is not great. So definitely intriguing to go that way. White Sox bullpen bad. Philadelphia's bullpen's bad. Chris Sanchez has been pretty good, though. So if he is efficient, if he works deeper into games, it's not going to go well for that good old Angels stack. Now, that'll do it for us today. I think it's an interesting interesting slate. There's definite pitchers, definite stacks to consider. You can get different fairly easily as well. So you guys have a good one. Good luck. Let's make some money, and I'll see you back tomorrow. Bye.